Bishop Jakes,
Hello, hello.
hello.
How are you, dear?
Hello.
It's good to
I'm
see you.
so good. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Oh my gosh, I was just telling everyone that you're one of my favorite people and that they
Oh,
must get ready, get ready, get ready.
I think the same about you. So it's so good to get to talk to you and to see you doing
Oh,
well.
I am. And how are you doing, Bishop?
I'm doing really well. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. You're managing how are you managing through this quarantine? What are you doing? Where are you quarantining and
I'm definitely quarantining. I haven't really been so much focused on myself as I have my church and my community and my
Mhm.
country, and trying to add value to the discussions and make sure people got accurate information about what was going on. So I haven't spent a whole lot of time nursing my own wounds too much. Uh,
That's
Purpose
so
driven, you know.
That's so good. No, you've been fantastic. And that's why I really wanted to ask you some quite important questions because you've been very outspoken about a lot of stuff. And I just want to salute you and say thank you. And I agree. I tell you, I'm working 15 hours a day at the moment with
Yeah,
getting out there, helping people to manage mental health, analyzing, writing books, doing clinical trials. We can really be constructive in this time, can't we? I mean, it's really,
absolutely. I think it's
yeah.
very important that you remain productive and constructive rather than just to be isolated and introspective, because that kind of thing deteriorates your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, and sometimes even your spiritual well-being. So it's very, very important that you find a way to give back and to find purpose and meaning in your life and go outside of yourself in some way, even if it's through technology. I've
Yeah.
seldom left the house.
Yeah. That's
I
the
have
thing.
actually quarantined.
Exactly. It's amazing. I was just, 'cause last time I was doing an interview and they had said to me, isn't isolation going to kill us? Because there's so much research on, how the isolation is one of the top leading causes of death. And I said, no, we got to look at this differently. Bishop, we have to look at this differently because actually we may be physically isolated from a large body of people, but mentally, look how people are reaching out. I mean, I'm so excited about the deep connections that people are performing, how are forming, people are going beyond, over and above to connect with each other. And just before you came on, I was talking about this because in the world of quantum physics, which is honestly the spiritual world, there's no space-time dimension. So here we've got a plan, we've got technology, and people I think are connecting in a deeper way. I think isolation is more physically but less mentally, which is really good for us. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what you feel about that.
I do. I agree with you. I was reading some studies that suggested that it is not the isolation itself that is detrimental to the well-being of the brain, but it is how you perceive yourself to be isolated. And so your
Yes.
perception about it has a lot to do with how your brain and how your body responds to it, according to the research that I did. And I also did some research into how they train astronauts to be in space for years at a time in isolation, and they come back mentally sound, but they're trained for it. They maintain their regiment. They don't handle it like they're on vacation. They get up, they get dressed, they get showered, they have a routine. Maintaining a routine gives us all a sense of normalcy in this very abnormal situation that we're in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, you're so correct about that. And I love that you brought up the astronauts example because that whole thing of us and what it affects on the brain. I'm just analyzing a set of clinical trials that I did over last year. And we were looking at the whole, all the stuff that I do, the mind-brain connection. And we look inside the brain and we look at what's happening on the non-conscious level, which is your deep spiritual level, which is the 99% part of you. And what's the way that you're managing that, the spiritual part of you is immediately reflected in the brain. And you can immediately see when your perception, so you said it so accurately, the way you perceive the situation is going to have a positive or negative effect on the brain, and we can see it. So if you say, okay, we are isolated, but I can do all these things. I can connect via technology. I can make an effort to
Yes.
help others. We see the brain going into an optimized state. Whereas
Yeah.
if you are talking to others, but all you're doing is complaining and it's negative and I'm so sad and it's so terrible, we see the brain going into a very toxic state, which is
Yeah.
very damaging to the whole immune system. So you're totally correct. I mean, it's amazing that I'm analyzing those clinical trials now. It wasn't planned that way. I didn't know that this was going to happen like any of us, but I'm busy in that analysis at the moment. And Bishop, I have learned so much about how important it is to bring thoughts into captivity and
Well,
to renew the mind.
I'm probably in the first grade compared to where you are.
No, 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 no. You know a lot.
But I read a lot.
Yes.
And there's a great deal of difference between, say, an inmate in solitary confinement and an
Mm.
astronaut who's in confinement, but he has purpose. And so the retrieval of holding on to purpose and a sense of self-worth and contributing in some level to society helps to deter some of the psychological and emotional mayhem that goes on in this environment. But I think the other thing that you have to look at is the stress of being bombarded with bad news on 24-hour news cycles every day. And we have a tendency to get addicted to that.
Yeah.
And we start watching it around the clock. Even though we heard it 2 hours ago, we watch it again with the commentator, you know? And I had to make myself break that addiction, turn away from it, and do some other things with my life that were therapeutic. And oddly enough, I bake, as you know. And it's sometimes I don't even bake to eat. I bake because it takes my mind off of everything else. I can't do it and think about anything
Love
else.
it.
It's kind of like a mental break from my head, you know?
I love it.
And
The
so
baking bishop. We'll have to call you the baking bishop.
the baking bishop. That's my new title.
That's your new title, the baking bishop. Oh, you should be sharing some of your pictures. I mean, I know you have done, and some of your recipes on social media. But it's true. It's so relaxing, and it's great to give ourselves that mental rest. Otherwise, we're bathing ourselves in toxicity. And you're so right. They just, you've seen it like for 10 minutes in the morning. So, because from the psychological research and the brain research, 4 times a day, maybe a 15-minute block is absolutely the max. And if you can keep it to 2 blocks a day, maybe of 20 minutes each, that's enough. And you'll get everything anyway. But people are watching, they're having a 5-minute break between. So they're watching like all day long and taking like 5-minute breaks. It's just too much.
Yes, too much. Yeah, you need a quiet space, what the Bible calls a pavilion, a place where you can tabernacle with God, meditate, think about what you're going to do when you get out of here, not allow the notion to come into your mind that there is going to be no end to this. You know, hope deferred makes the heart sick. You have to have a hope of something beyond this and use this as a time to plan and strategize. And I think to some degree, and it's much more complicated than this, but I think to some degree, Psalms 23, he maketh me to lie down in green pastures. I think the Lord made the world lay down for a minute. And I think that part of that reason is because we were becoming too tribal, too combative. We were looking at life from the perspective of millennials against boomers, Democrats against us, against other countries. I mean, short people against tall people. We fought about everything in the world there was to fight about, and it was getting more and more toxic. And there's nothing like a common enemy to bring about unity.
Yes,
and
I
all of a
totally
sudden
agree.
you redefine who my brother is, who my sister is, because we're in the same trouble.
I love that. I was interviewing an epidemiologist the other day who's like at the forefront of understanding what's going on. And he said that he made a statement that I quote everywhere, Bishop. And it's related to what you've just said. He said that this is the first time in history that all of humanity has been united against a common enemy. So all of humanity united. It's like we've been brought to our knees, isn't it? I mean, we've got to a space where we can't carry on like we were. So when people keep saying, let's go back to normal, what was normal and was it good anyway? Isn't this our chance to remake what it should be?
I so agree with that. This brought to the forefront the underbelly of some problems that pre-existed COVID-19. COVID-19 exacerbated it. The lack of health care, the lack of, for all Americans, the equality that there needs to be in communities where there are food deserts, the underbelly of the hunger problem that we already had. But now, it's easy. America has a them and they mentality. Oh, they are having a problem. It's a shame what's going on with them. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. But when we become the them and the they, then something has to be done immediately. This is horrible.
Exactly.
But this has been some people's reality for years and years and years. And I'm glad that we're talking about the underserved. I'm glad that we're talking about the Black and brown communities. I'm glad we're talking about the first responders who were on the front line that we didn't really think that were significant, that the truck driver was a hero, that the person who worked in the grocery store was a hero. We're redefining how we define, as opposed to just because I can sing or just because I can throw a ball, now I'm a role model. Now we're starting to think that the person who bagged up our food is a role model.
And who took the chance to go out there, even though they have a family that they could infect, they would go out there and make sure we got our parcels delivered to our front door. And those nurses and doctors, I mean, it's just, I speak to them and it's unbelievable. And on that note, Dr. Bishop, there's been certain doctors, even medical doctors, that are, promulgating myths. I mean, we know in this time of pandemic, there's always going to be someone who comes up with some stupid theory and then starts putting it up and everything. Can you say something about that? Because I don't know if you've seen some of this and if you're laughing. I mean, so really.
From bleach in our veins to black people can't get infected to the virus goes away with hot, warm weather. Everybody wants to be a doctor right now.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from a good place. We all want to save the baby, but we need to let those who are professionals lead the narrative, and then those of us who have other spheres of influence to echo that narrative.
I love that.
That it gets down to everybody.
I love that. I got an email sent to me the other day with a video of a medical doctor who is saying that the nurses, I mean, this is so horrific, but that the nurses are sitting, this is all a myth, and the nurses and doctors are just sitting and playing cards in the hospitals, and this is all just a big conspiracy theory, and as though there's some sadistic group of people that are wanting to wipe out the planet. And, people are believing this stuff.
Let me assure everybody watching, this is not a conspiracy. I know people personally, lots of people who have died from the virus.
Yes.
I know for a fact, without any reservation, no newspaper, no Fox, no CNN, no MSNBC. I know multiple people who died, and I know multiple people who are grieving right now because they couldn't even hold their mother's hand while they passed away or lost their son or daughter. This is absolutely a tragedy of mammoth proportions in our generation. And it's funny, though, to me, Dr. Leaf, we treated 9/11 like it was a crisis and like it was real. And even though there were only 3,000 deaths, now we're approaching 50,000 deaths.
Yeah.
And we don't seem to quite get it.
No.
That it's real.
Exactly. People are like fighting and protesting to go and fight isolation, when we have to flatten the curve, and we have to recognize that humans are the pathway. That we have to stand together, and if we stand together, we can solve these. There's enough food for people. Food is lying rotten. I mean, there's ways, if we put our heads together and collaborate, we can feed the hungry. This is a chance for us to really be human.
We delivered 3,000 meals to nurses and first responders who were working midnight shifts when the restaurants are closed in the hospital and all the restaurants were shut down all over the city. We delivered 3,000 meals to them over the past few days. And now we're starting to feed poor people in underserved communities, little kids who have no food, single mothers who are home alone with their kids, lost their money, lost their job, and we're just bringing them boxes of food. You have to do something to contribute, to feel like you're a part of it, even if it's just giving, if it's sewing, if it's calling on an elderly person and checking on them, if it's carrying cookies and leaving it on somebody's front porch. We all, because really deep down, we're really all loving people.
Exactly. It's in who we are. We want to reach out, and we see that if you look at like Instagram and that kind of thing, most people are saying, I want to help you. The majority of the reaction has been fantastic. It has been, I want to help you cope. I want to help each other. And that's been beautiful. So there's just these few little uprisings in between that are not, we mustn't listen to those. We need to make sure that we focus on that. But thank you for what you're doing. That's amazing. And, as the Bible says, it just takes one man to make a difference. So if each of us is doing our little bit, we are having that it's exponential, the effect, when we start getting out there and doing something for someone.
One of the things that we have to realize is when the founding fathers came up with the notion of the freedom of the press, they did not, I don't believe that they foresaw a day that the press would become a business. And because it is a business with competing networks, and I've worked in television, done talk shows, been in that industry, produced films and movies, so I know the inner workings.
You know it.
Yeah, it is a ratings-driven business. What they do is get on one side of the argument, the other one gets on the other side of the argument, and the conflict drives up the ratings. So we're actually being fed a toxic diet of opposing opinions. People are paid to come on a network and argue in front of us. And then they go and have coffee, and they're not really angry, but we don't know that. So we get more angry than they really are, and we take up the calls, and we go out there and we start fighting on information that is not pure or accurate or precise. And now in a crisis, we have lost trust in our institutions, in our government, in our media, in our religious leaders, in everything. And now we need that trust restored, because this is a crisis, and you need to know what is true, not just what drives up the ratings.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. You know, just related to that, and I want to ask you how we handle that, but just related to that, I've been saying to people that the scientists are the adults in the house at the moment, because the scientists are the one community that are not getting into political arguments and, you know, exactly what you've just described. They are crossing boundaries, colors, borders, belief systems, and they collaborating as you should be. They discover something. They're not worrying about, oh, this is my discovery, I'm going to publish it so I can increase my grant money. It's all about, I found something, and immediately the world scientists are sharing what they're finding. So how do we navigate this manipulation of the media?
One of the things that we have to do is listen at all of it, because
I'd spill coffee everywhere.
Most people choose a side, like they're watching a football game, and they cheer for a team. And then they not only disagree with the other team, they almost hate the other team.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, they almost hate the other team.
Yeah.
Whereas I like to hear what everybody has to say. And then I have not given up being the CEO of me.
Ah, okay. So listen to everyone to be the CEO of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, okay, the governor can open up the state. The mayor can open up the state, the president can open up the country, but I get to decide whether I'm going to participate or whether I'm going to put myself at risk, and to what degree of risk I am comfortable with. And I want the American people not to give up the power and the right of, number one, being a thinking person, and secondly, to make your own decisions. Just because somebody opened up something doesn't mean you need to go. And you have to make those decisions based on the nuances. I know as a spiritual leader, they're talking about opening up churches. All churches are not the same. There are small churches that might have 20 people in a room that seats 200. And
exactly. So they
can distance themselves. And maybe for them it might work. There might be other churches that have multiple campuses, sites, in-home, social media. You have to look at your situation, your age, your vulnerability, how apt you are to become hooked up to a ventilator, and then decide whether this is a wise move for you or not.
That is absolutely brilliant, because being the CEO of your own decision making, you're not being a sheep, you're not just following, and the mere fact that there's no agreement at the moment at all with what to do, and multiple mixed messages, and as you say, all the media confusion and the conflict, just the mere fact that we're living in a world of confusion. I always tell people, go and look what the scientists are doing, number one. So there's a lot of great medical sites that are giving us good scientific information. And then the other thing is as well, is when you in being a CEO like that, as you say, making your own decisions, you then make it relative to your own life, and you're actually going to do the right thing, as opposed to just doing what everyone else is doing. And it is so different, because they don't even know. I mean, they don't know. Every day there's new. It could be that you have a genetic weakness, and there's just so much unknown. They don't know why some people die and why some people don't. So when you have an unknown, you have to have extreme caution. And what you're saying is that extreme caution. I love that approach. We have to, as individuals, make the decision. If you're in a state that they are opening up like they are today, and it's Georgia that they've opened up, yet there's deaths, there's people that are still dying in their droves. Use your wisdom, and
I don't know how you can distance yourself and get a massage.
Exactly, or a hair, or a facial, or your hair done.
from
Yeah.
6 feet away, you're going to get your hair tended, you know. That doesn't make sense to me. And then you have to decide whether you're willing to take the risk of the mask being enough barrier and all of that sort of thing.
Yes.
But the other thing that we have to get back to is we have to love other people who are different from ourselves.
I love that. Thank you for saying that.
We have to. We have not done that. It is so easy to get in your little group, live in your little world, have your little experience, and say you're tied into the world, but really you're in a silo. This has forced us out of a silo because without discrimination, COVID-19 has come in and killed women, men, young, old, black, white, Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, without any bias
Exactly.
at all. And all of a sudden we begin to recognize, oh, we're more the same than we are different.
Exactly.
And maybe we ought to talk to each other, and maybe we ought to irrigate our consciousness with other streams of awareness.
Oh, I'm so pleased you're saying this.
Yeah, there's something that always stood out to me. The Bible says that Jacob worked 14 years to get Rachel, ended up with Leah. And the Bible said that he spent the night with her, and in the morning he discovered that it was Leah. Look at how out of touch he was with who he was touching.
That's so good.
So that lets you know how you can be so unaware. If you can spend the night with a woman and not know who she is until morning, then you can live in a city and not know what's going on 5 blocks away from you.
Oh, wow. Oh,
and
wow.
So I think a lot of us suffer from a Jacob complex. We like to think that we're having an intimate relationship, but we have never looked the problem in the face. And until we look the problem in the face and get away from the numbers, because it's almost 50,000 people are dead, that's a number. But when you put look it in the face, here I answer the phone all for the last 6 weeks with people screaming on the phone, crying to me over people who just died or somebody who just passed away or somebody they couldn't go touch. I heard the sound. You have to look the problem in the face so you can fix it. And that's one of the things that science does. Science looks the problem in the face.
In the face.
So that they can fix it. It doesn't just look at numbers and stats, but it also looks, you know, at the on a bacterial level, on a cellular level, what is it going to take to bring about resolution? I want to ask you a question. I know it's your thing, but I want to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Are you at all worried that the haste to get out a vaccine and a cure and the speed with which we are moving at it might be so fast that the first recipients of what comes down off the shelf might put themselves at risk, and the cure might be worse than the thing we're trying to get cured from?
I totally do believe that that is the case. We have to proceed with caution. Anything and the epidemiologists that I talk to, and I work with teams of doctors with the work that I do, and all the discussions that I'm having with scientists are saying we cannot rush this. We could create a whole new problem that we then have 2 problems, one on top of each other. And haste is never the answer. It's never the answer in terms of any decision. As soon as you make a hasty decision, your brain does not function properly. You can see the difference in the brain. You do not have clarity. You cannot access the wisdom of God. We're immersed in wisdom. You know, Bishop, there's a lot of quantum physics research that explain that the spiritual nature of how we immerse in gravitational fields. And those gravitational fields aren't just scientific facts. They actually have qualitative values, and those qualitative values are wisdom and all the elements of wisdom: joy, peace, patience, etc. And I say patience because we have to have patience. And if we are all fighting and in conflict in the way that the politicians and so on are acting, we're not going to get a good answer. But if we listen to what the scientists are saying, they are saying, do not rush this. Let's access, let's have patience. Let's do this with wisdom, that there's projected time frames. Obviously that, and it takes actually up to 4 years to actually really have a vaccine that is safe. So even 18 months is pushing it, you know, and jumping into, to say things like hydrochloroquine is safe. There's so much stuff. It's so psychoactive. It has so many side effects. It's not, the clinical trials have been small. Same with remdesivir. We can't just grab onto things, and we've got to stop looking for a drug. We have to, no, let me rephrase that. The scientists have to keep searching for the drugs in the time frame that science works in, because it's a very complex process. We've got to stop looking for a quick fix as humanity. There is no quick fix to the situation. What we have to do is learn patience. And I believe the isolation, the distancing, these measures that are bringing a level of discipline back into our functioning as humans, where we've really got to consider others. You can't just, I don't believe in social distancing, so I'm just going to ignore it. You could be asymptomatic and infect another 500 people, and then they could infect. It's exponential. So we have to have responsibility as humans. And that's why I think the model of Jesus in the garden also kind of answers that. It goes to the question you've asked, the answer I've given in your previous statement. We have to face this thing full on. Jesus demonstrates that. We've forgotten all about what Jesus does, I believe. What Jesus is, he got in the garden and he faced the issue, and it's painful, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. But there's a time process, but eventually we will rise again. And I think that's the hope that we have to keep hanging on to. We need to be prepared to get uncomfortable and stop looking for the tablets and the quick fix, and we've got so caught up in the last 30 years, Bishop, in quick fix mentality, and we want everything quick, fast, say, do it, let's do it, and science and tablets and medicine. That isn't how science works. It's really a trial and error process.
You know, when you think about it, the public is not going to come out until they feel safe.
Exactly.
I'm not going to put my children, my grandchildren, my wife into a situation, or even myself, into a situation that I feel like is not safe. So if it's going to take a couple of years for us to feel safe, that means that those of us who have businesses, churches, ministries, we may have to rethink how we do what we do. Yeah. Because 2 years is too long to just be waiting. We have to be innovative in this moment and creative in this moment and find a way. And I have been talking to leaders of all stripes across the board about reinventing yourself. One of the great things about the way God made man is how adaptable we are. Exactly. Yeah, so our adaptability quotient enables us to be able to adapt to things that other species might not be able to adapt to and to adjust. That's why we made cars. That's why we made phones. That's why we got sunscreen. We adapt to the conditions and come up with ways that we can survive. This is one of those conditions that we must re-evaluate, re-innovate, and adapt to the situation by using the creativity, part of our God-likeness. We were created by a creator, and we were created in his likeness and image. So if you were created by a creator, you are creative. Exactly. Tap into that creativity. I totally agree. That's brilliant. Create something brilliant that's going to work in the situation that we're in. And I've been using my time to rethink. We have reached more people without opening the doors of our church than we did when we were opening the doors of our church. And I thought, wow, I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the millions of people that are streaming our services, even beyond anything I've ever seen before. And because the whole world is in a panic, and you can reach the world and not just your members or not just your parishioners, fans. So, you know, maybe God is trying to give us a tune-up and get us to I love that. You know, and come up with something that's innovative and contemporary and 21st century, because Dr. Leaf, we have stopped being creative. Yes, we've stopped thinking. We're always thinking. I said that wrong too. We're not thinking properly anymore. We've changed how we're thinking, and that creativity. You know, our brains, just from this conversation, our brains have already changed. Our brains are completely neuroplastic, and our brains are simply following the instruction of the mind. So you said such relevant, so many incredible things there, and I'm so glad we're recording that people can rewatch this, because every moment is an opportunity for creativity. Your brain is never, ever the same. So when people think, I want to go back, you can never actually go back. You're always moving forward, but it's the quality of how you move forward. So that brilliant creativity, we're brilliant. Humans are absolutely brilliant. And I wish we would actually embrace that. We're brilliant, and we can take that brilliance and that creativity. We can collaborate, because no one knows it all. We've all got a piece that we can contribute. So the competition, I always talk, Bishop, about competition is the antithesis of how we as humans are designed. We're not designed for competition, we're designed for enhancement. And we've lived in a world of competition being the dominant kind of flavor. And I believe now this creativity is forcing us into a dominance of enhancement. We need to know how to
And creativity naturally leads to an enhancement process where we collaborate and work together. I don't know how
You said something that really, really excites me. When you said you can never go back, I almost jumped out of my seat because that statement saved my marriage. That statement has saved my ministry. There were
Wow.
times in my life that I yearned for things to be like they were, rather than to explore the beauty of how they are.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And so much of our time is spent in love with the way it used to be that we miss the beauty of how it
Of the
is.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had to make those transitions in my ministry, in my marriage, in my life. You can never go back. I will never be 21 again. I will never be 40 again. I will never be 50 again. So it's no need for me to build a shrine and worship around a monument of something that's obsolete. I should find the beauty of being at the age and the stage I am right now and explore that and see what the beauty is. The fact that we have not done that means that we're way behind on fuel. We are way behind on efficiency. We're way behind on taking care of the planet. We're way behind on the innovative, creative ways that we should use it. Do you not know we are still dealing with problems that we were dealing with when I was a child?
It's insane.
It's
I agree with you.
absolutely insane.
Yeah.
The repressed communities that we had growing up are still the repressed communities that we have today.
Exactly.
We stopped problem solving. We didn't used to be like that. We used to be one of the most innovative countries in the world, a city set up on a hill. We stopped that and started bickering and we started moving celebrities into power rather than thinkers into power.
Exactly.
So now it's about how many people are following you on Twitter and Facebook.
And how much money you've got.
Yeah, how much money you've got. And if you got enough money and you've got enough followings, we'll put you in the movie. We'll put you over here. We'll put you over there. Never mind that you never had any acting classes. You don't know what you're doing.
Exactly.
It's all about fluff. And you cannot be innovative in fluff. You have to get down to the facts and not the fluff.
You have to dig into that deep unconscious mind, which is the spiritual part of you. And that for the last 60 years, especially the last 30 years, Bishop, has been an area that has been completely neglected. And if you remove the humanity from humans, you're going to turn into and try and make them into avatars and machines. You're going to land up with the current issue that we have now. And you say that things haven't changed since you were a child. I agree. If you have a look at the statistics, people are now dying for the first time in history. The trend of people living longer has reversed. Now, this is pre-COVID. It reversed pre-COVID. It started in the mid-90s and it hit a peak in between 2014 and 2015. So with all the advances in medicine and technology, people are still dying younger. And if you look at why, it's mind management. It's how they're using their mind for creativity, for innovation, for making changes. And as you say, if something is still the same as it was so many years ago, and that's what I wanted to ask you my next question about the African American community I come from South Africa. I grew up in the apartheid era. I worked in my husband and I worked in the midst of that crisis. I spent 25 years working in those areas that were so damaged, mental health wise, education wise. I would go 3 days a week into those areas. 9 months pregnant, no one would touch me. No white woman came out of there alive. I could go anywhere and on my own because I went there with a message of hope. And so I understand this discrimination and the changes. So we have to innovate. We globally as humanity, we have to start changing this. And this is such an time for us to do that. I get so excited talking to you because yes, this is it. We've got to get this message through. People need to recognize now's the chance to stop the discrimination, to make the changes of things that were like they were, that are no longer acceptable. Sorry, I got on my bandwagon there.
No. I could talk to you all day. We can talk about South Africa. I love South Africa. We can talk about that. And it is a mirror and a reflection of the racial complexities that we have in this country today. So I find that very fascinating. I knew you and I would get on the phone. We would do really well.
I think so. I think we should do a podcast about this. Honestly, I think it's a very important thing. So I'm going to reach out to your team and see, because I think we need to have a discussion in depth about this. It's so important.
One of the problems that we have in this country is that we write the books that we read. And when you write the books that you read, especially about race, your conclusions are skewed by the fact that it is your POV, it's your point of view. So you walk away with, I know how they are. I know what's wrong with them. I know what they need to do, but you forget that you wrote the book that you read, okay? You made a decision about me without me. When you really sit down, we don't talk across lines, not across party lines, not across denominational lines, not across racial lines. The very fact that we're doing this is a bit of an anomaly because you don't see that happening outside of the church. You see it happening in the church, but you don't see enough of that happening where you respect each other enough to believe that I do understand what it's like to be Black in America. I don't want to get on an interview and have an argument with another race about what is my truth. It's like a man telling a woman that he knows how she feels when she has a baby. He could be a gynecologist and not know how she feels.
He hasn't a clue.
Yeah,
Trust me, he hasn't a clue.
And one of the wisest things you can ever do is know what you don't know. And America does not know what it doesn't know. And the second thing we don't clean up our messes. We do make messes. We've always made messes. Everybody makes messes, but we never fix them. So we're still dealing with Native Americans. How in the world can we still be dealing with atrocities with Native Americans 400 years later? We're still dealing with slavery. We're still dealing with the after effects of things that we swept up under. It reminds me of cleaning up when my mother was coming home, and we would have to clean up. We knew she would be home in a minute. Well, we didn't really clean up. We swept things up under the rug and hid things behind the couch, and that's what we've done. And it looked real pretty and it looked real nice until somebody moved the couch, and all of a sudden the toys were up under the couch and the garbage was up under the carpet. That's been the way we've done. We have been fixed the cosmetology of the country.
Exactly.
But to get down into the real integral details of really restoring areas of brokenness, we have not done that well. I think we can do that. I think we have enough smart, loving, bright people that we can fix this. And I think that most Americans, deep down on the inside, don't mind me having an equal share of the pie as long as they get their share too. I think that most of us want that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that you should be paid, if you do the same work as a man, you should be paid like the same fee that a man.
Exactly.
I don't think that you should be undervalued because you're a woman.
Exactly.
I don't think that I should be undervalued because I'm Black. I don't think I should go to jail more readily than you go to jail if we commit the same crime.
Exactly.
We're just asking for equality. So let me drive this home to your readers. One of the reasons, there are many reasons why African Americans are dying more readily. There are many reasons. Some of them are our own fault. Some of them are our eating habits, our choices, our decisions that we've made that need to be corrected, and we need to be more diligent. It would be helpful to make those decisions if greasy fast food restaurants did not all come into our community. When I go into Highland Park, I can't find a fried chicken place.
No.
You know, they're not going to be.
It's not a food desert.
Most of your liquor stores are going to be in the communities where people can't even afford to buy the most. And so you're putting poison in the candy of the kids. And they're wondering, why are you sick? Okay, why are you sick? So you don't find Whole Food stores in inner city neighborhoods.
No, you find a food desert. Yeah.
There are food deserts. There's all those kinds of problems. The other thing that's causing Black people to die more readily is that most average Black people work in the public. So whether they are nurses, whether they are people that you meet at the checkout counter when you're in the grocery store, or whether you're going through the magnetometer at the airport, we are in the professions that touch people. Okay, so we are far more apt to contract the disease because going to work for us generally means going into the public square, connecting with people, and in this case, it means going to danger every day. And we cannot afford not to go to work because we have children to feed and things to do. And the same thing with the Latino, the Hispanic, the Spanish-speaking community. They're often involved in situations where they are interacting with people, coming into hotel rooms, working with people in the medical profession, in the health profession, in the areas that interact with people, as opposed to being in a cubicle working on technology, which is where we need to be, and where I hope we end up is in STEM programs, and STEAM programs, and getting because that's the wave of the future. That's where the opportunities are.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that we don't gravitate to things like that is when you don't see that around you, you cannot be what you do not see. And
you
so,
cannot be,
you know, if you live next door to somebody like you, then the little girl who lives next door to you says, I could be her when I grow up. Just your existence there, just
it
your
has an
presence
impact.
there becomes a model to emulate. But when you live next door to a drug dealer, when you live next door to somebody who just got out of prison for a felony, when you live in an incubation of decadence and you cannot get out because economic disparities will not allow you to have the options. There's about 10 different Dallases in the city of Dallas. You can drive 5 blocks and be in a completely different Dallas. So,
yes.
So everybody lives in Dallas, but we're not having the same experience.
Exactly. And are people even aware of the other experiences? That's the thing. It's that you've got to actually become aware. We have to take the blinkers off. We have to dive into the depths of who we are. And, you know, you bring it back to the individual, because Bishop, it's going to start with the individual. And the individuals will then change the community. And we see that in the way that we have people suppress their emotions for the last 30 to 60 years. It's if you have a problem and you feel sad, it's, oh, well, go take a tablet. But that's not what the model is. The model is bring all thoughts into captivity. The model is renew your mind, not for the purpose of just you being a happy person. It's for you being a decent human so that you can reach out and help others. You know, that flow through. And that's kind of been forgotten, because when you operate like that, you'll say, hey, I bring that person's in a food desert. That person doesn't have the opportunity. That person, because of their skin color, is being incarcerated unfairly, and et cetera, et cetera. But if you don't become aware, if you don't start bringing those thoughts into captivity, gathering awareness, embracing this situation, taking the time to process, taking the time to reconceptualize this whole situation as an individual for yourself, your own issues, and then as it grows. Then, there's a time now. We in the most incredible era. I see this COVID-19 as something that could be something so incredible as we look for the solutions. We have a chance to become decent humans again. I know I keep saying that, but I honestly think that people have forgotten how to be human. You know, Jesus modeled that so clearly.
There was a study done several years ago, you may or may not be familiar with it, that was done with the great-grandchildren of the Holocaust. And during DNA testing of the great-grandchildren of the Holocaust, they discovered that the trauma of their great-grandparents showed up in a change in the format of their DNA, that survival necessitated that the DNA structure recompose itself up under the pressure, and it became hereditary from generation to generation. And I found that amazing. When you look at that compounded impact of generational trauma that passes down and being in a survival mode for 200 or 300 years, there are just beginning to be little studies made about the effects of slavery and 400 years. My great-grandmother was a slave, and I remember her. I remember her very well. She died when I was about 10 years old. She was born a slave. She died a free woman. Her name was Nancy Jakes. She lived in Montrose, Mississippi, and I can see her in my head right now.
Wow.
That's how close we are to slavery.
Wow.
But in the way we tell it, oh, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's like it's not real.
Yeah, it was, but it wasn't a long time ago.
No, and it's...
When you look at the children of Israel and how long it took them to overcome the trauma of being enslaved in Egypt, was a process that went on for generations and generations and generations. Now, we didn't do DNA testing with the children of Israel. We didn't do DNA testing with the children of slaves. We did start to do DNA testing with the descendants of Jews. But they taught us certain assumptions that we can begin to understand that mass oppression to people has biological consequences.
Totally goes away.
I'm preaching to the choir.
It's so. But you've explained it beautifully, and it's called epigenetics, and it's so true. Your thoughts, your patterns will pass through the sperm and the ova to the next generations. So it's in us, and it goes through it keeps passing through the generations. And they're seeing it in those studies. I know exactly which ones you're referring to. I actually wrote about them in one of my books. And also there's a lot of other studies showing just your thought patterns, your diet, it passes through. And it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to live under that. It means that you have the proclivity. So the proclivity is there, the potential is there, but what you do with your mind, you can change that. So because everything keeps changing, so you can either live into the same pattern, which goes to the whole discussion we're having. We can live into the same patterns, or we can actually become aware as a human and as humanity of these things, and we can start changing them because the evidence is there. Biologically, God gives us science. Science is spiritual. Science is just how it works, as we know. God is knowledge. Science just tells us how it works. So we can't separate them. Do you want to know how to be a decent human? We've got to look at the lessons from science because it teaches, like that lesson you've just said now. We can read the story in the Bible, how it passes down from generation to generation. The sins of the father pass through. Or you can balance that with a scientific perspective, which says epigenetically, the study you just quoted, the other studies, and that means you must take responsibility. Because if you are being very negative in this time, it will pass through. But if you are being real, and you say things, this sucks, it is scary. If you admit it and you get it out, and you start trying to be creatively innovative, that will pass down to the generation. So you can pass down. You're not denying. Denying is terrible. It causes tremendous problems. But it's admitting, and then it's trying to deal. So it's admitting and going, get in the garden and go through. That's the message we want to pass on to generations, and that's what we can do now. We can, those of us in this story now, can pass the story on to generations and improve humanity in the future in everything.
One of the things we need as Christians, when we have a real discussion about race and equities, we throw names at it like race baiting, because we think that unity is just me shutting up. So that would be like being in a bad marriage and saying it's a good marriage as long as you don't complain. So you're tearing up the marriage because you're complaining. No, I'm telling you the truth. And and the marriage won't be right until we confront the truth and we have that moment of confrontation. We need to have the kinds of discussions where we pull back the cover and go up under the rug and see where the dirt was hidden and go in there and sweep that out. We can clean this up together. And I want to say something because I think it's really important. Let me just get this in. I am not worried about the extremists and the atrocious, obnoxious, disgusting things that they say. They will never destroy this country. What will destroy this country is the silence of good people. If to all the people out there who have heart and have compassion and care, regardless of your race, regardless of your income,
belief system,
your belief system, speak up for God's sake. Say something. Don't just think about it and pray about it and ask God to do something about it.
Pass the buck, pray.
Pass the buck. See, sometimes spiritual people pass the buck in prayer. And they do like Moses. They get down to the Red Sea. The Pharaoh is chasing them. The children of Israel are murmuring and complaining. And Moses wants to pray about it. You know, what do? God says, stretch forth what is in your hand, drive and go forward. You have power. Open your mouth when you see something that's wrong. Don't just acquiesce to extremism and get in a corner and talk about it. Speak up. You have power. The power of life and death is in your tongue. And I want to make an appeal to the silent majority of good people who are allowing the fringed, emotionally deranged, disturbed, angry, bitter people who need healing to get the microphone for this country. We must take the mic back from the country and let good people arise. The Bible says when God arises, his enemies will be scattered.
Perfect love casts out fear. And you know, Bishop, the science shows, and we'll end off with this because I want to respect your time. And this is we just started this conversation. We have to continue this conversation, that's for sure. But what I wanted to say is that neuroscience and some of the work that I've been involved in shows that I get so excited sharing this. I know you're going to love this. We are designed to be consciously and deliberately aware every 10 seconds about what we are thinking and feeling and choosing, which means 6 times a minute we have the ability to stand back, observe our own thinking, feeling and choices, connect in with the wisdom of the ancient wisdom of God, and actually make good decisions. Now, if every person utilized that, if we instead of shooting our mouths off in aggression, we shut our mouths off in love. Because if you take 60 seconds where the neurochemical rush is happening in your brain, and in that 60 seconds you have these 6 conscious moments where every 10 seconds you can actually formulate a thought that is in alignment with love, and what you will speak will be life into the situation, as opposed to just these reactive statements. So that's just the science behind what you just said, that literally we've got to think and we've got to speak out the truth and stand together, because together we're strong. It's not about us, it's about us in the world.
Yes, it's us in the world. And we are so interconnected that we can't afford not to care about the people of the world.
And we have evidence right now.
If the economy goes down, it affects America's economy. If a plague breaks out in Africa, Ebola, it ends up in Dallas, Texas.
Exactly.
If it breaks out in China, it ends up in New York.
Exactly.
This notion of exclusivity and superiority and isolation is destructive to the reality that we are all stewards of the planet together, and we must see ourselves in a much broader understanding of humanity than just community.
And that's what the message of this time is. If we can start seeing that, we can go into a new era of enhancement instead of competing against each other. Oh my gosh, you have been absolutely, as I said, you're one of my favorite people in the world. I love talking to you. Oh, it's so much fun. And I hope I can invite you back again, and I hope I can invite you. Wonderful. And do a podcast where we're not limited with time and we can really talk these issues through, because I don't think enough people are talking about the stuff that you and I have just spoken about.
When they're not talking about it, they can't talk about it. And the truth of the matter is the average American doesn't even have a passport. And you can't have a global thought that embraces global problems, global economies, global pandemics when you never leave your house.
Exactly.
And so thank you for being global in your thinking and being willing to share not only your intellectualism, your professionalism, and the specificity of what you do as it relates to career. You have traveled around the world. You have seen suffering around the world. I am praying right now for third world countries who are just now starting to get the pandemic. There is no way to isolate in Lagos. There's no way to isolate in India. There's no way to isolate in Caracas. And when that disease, if it gets into those third world countries where 9 people are living in a 1-bedroom house, the death rate is going to be comparable to the bubonic plague.
Yeah, it is. It is. You're absolutely right. No, you've been in Africa. I've traveled through Africa working. I've been in Rwanda just post genocide. I know what you're talking. I've worked in those areas. I've gone into those little huts and spent years working in those areas where you have a whole family living in a room that is the size of Okay, so we know, and that's true. We have to pray for that. That we each as individuals come together and support our scientists and support and act with a global mindset. So thank you for what you said. Thank you for what you do. And let's collaborate. Let's teach people how to collaborate, Bishop. Let's really get people getting a global mindset.
We can do that together.
We can do that. I know we can. I know we can. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. And thank you so much for everything. And we'll be in touch, and we really love you so much. And thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for your wisdom, and thank you for spending this time with us.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Much love to you and to your audience and to everybody that's watching right now. We appreciate you. We love you. And I pray that you have the peace of God, which passes all understanding. The peace of God allows you to sleep on a boat in the middle of a storm. I know it's storming outside. I know the boat is rocking, but Jesus was taking a nap. May that kind of peace rest on you today in Jesus' name.
Oh, amen. Thank you so much. God bless. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us.
If you want another awesome video in our Black Excellence series, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.